Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Brian and I'm joined by Dylan, the host of Wicked Good Show, really the guy who got this podcast network started. Dylan, how you doing?
I don't know about that, but I will take the credit if it's coming my way. But I think
It
you
was the
deserve a
first,
lot more credit than that. You're,
yeah, Brian and
we,
Dylan take on the world. First podcast we ever did.
I guess so. I'm like the Spielberg to your Lucas of like Star Wars, where I came on more so as like a heavy-handed advisor early on, which is what Spielberg was to George Lucas, but really Star Wars is George Lucas's baby. But I do, yeah. You and we've been talking on the internet about shows and sports and Survivor and reality TV. And so
Yes.
this is my first time really coming on to talk with you specifically about a individual show, which House of the Dragon. Obviously, that's this podcast we're listening to. Yeah, I am very, very excited to be here. I have many thoughts and opinions and frustrations and praises that I have wanted to get out that I've been yelling into the void to my text groups that really don't tend to acknowledge me or want to answer me back because I'm pretty psychotic about it. The only other person who is, if you follow our Survivor show, The Blindsiders, I discussed a lot about my brother Mike. He's probably my in real life best friend because we share the same the same issues in our brain where we hate the same things and love the same things. So him and I have basically just been saying the same things back to each other about this season. He's also a book reader, such as myself, so I am looking forward to discussing spoilers and the books and all that stuff after this. But I have reached a point with this show where I've begun to watch it as a complete separate entity from
Yes.
George R. R. Martin's universe and his books and all that. And I think that has brought me some peace. But
Mhm.
there are some things that still drive me absolutely insane. But I am very, very excited to be here and talk about it.
Yeah, and I think, I'm very much the same way where I was very precious about any changes in the early goings of this show. And I think that A Night of the Seven Kingdoms showed that direct adaptation can work really well. But I've, over time, just kind of had to accept that this is a different story, much in the same way that The Walking Dead on AMC was an adaptation that very heavily adjusted the source material. That's what House of the Dragon has become. And I just try to enjoy it through that lens. But I do think it will be good to talk about all the changes and the many frustrations that we might have as people who, are fans of George R. R. Martin's original intended story here.
And there's a lot. I think there was a lot riding on HBO for this season of House of the Dragon. I think it has paid off for the most part so far because I think a lot of people left season two very upset. Season two was instead of just an entire bridge episode or like a few bridge episodes, season two was essentially an entire bridge season to bridge us between seasons one and season three. And I know that like that's just how shows work sometimes. But the actual story itself really did not progress all that much in season two, where the way it's progressing now in season three, and it's become. I got a little nervous at the start of the season. I will admit that. Obviously, I wasn't here to talk first episode. Was not a big fan of the first episode of season three, so that was kind of. I came in a little bit nervous. I think that we have hit a very very good consistent stride now. And we'll talk about it with this episode. I've really enjoyed the past two episodes that have been kind of more of the building. Some people I think get frustrated. We'll talk about it. I'll let you lead us
Yeah.
into it. There's a lot to talk about, but I'm glad to be very excited.
Yeah, and I think the show's in a tough spot where they initially planned season two to be 10 episodes, and then
Yeah.
HBO pulled the rug out from under them at the last second, and they've been having to cram a lot into these episodes, which I think is good because, as you said, season two was a lot of setting the table, but then not a lot of payoff, whereas this season has just been like pretty balls to the wall payoff and action, and I think that's really cool. But let's start with the King's Landing storyline in this episode. I think this is great. I love when we get to see Damon dealing with horrors beyond his comprehension, much like we did last season. Now we have kind of a storyline reminiscent of Danny's storyline in Marine when the Sons of the Harpy were killing all of her Unsullied. Now we have Gold Cloaks being murdered in the streets. This is a complete show edition. This is something to give Damon to do that he doesn't have in the books. What are your thoughts on this storyline right now?
Yeah, so we are starting with what I think is the most boring kind of plot line going in this season, and I don't necessarily mean what happened in this episode. I mean everything going on with Rhaenyra and King's Landing. I find to be the least intriguing story that is currently going in this season. So to start getting some sort of progression there, other than just like we have no money, the people are starving and dying, I'm not that great of a ruler. I think to now start to see some actual pushback to that is nice. Like you said, this is something that's new to the story itself. It was not a book plot line in terms of the City Watch all being butchered or murdered like this. It was a real, when it happened at the end of the episode, it was a real like, oh, okay. Like, whereas I feel like I was kind of loosely paying attention to the parts when we were in King's Landing. The episode of episode 3, where we finally got to see Rhaenyra work through her logistics of actually being queen and what that looks like in King's Landing. I actually did not love that episode, and I thought the acting and the writing was very clunky. But then the more I like saw TikToks of it and laughed and found reasons to enjoy it, I feel like maybe some of that was more intentional by the writers. I think Sarah Hess wrote that episode, which I had Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess. There's thoughts. I have very mixed feelings about Sarah Hess, and I have nothing but kind of disdain for Ryan Condal. But they are doing some things right here, and I think that this pivot here definitely will add a lot more plot and intrigue to what's going to happen in King's Landing for the rest of the season. Whereas I don't know how much we would have truly had if not having this added in. So I am enjoying that. It was shocking though, because like it happened at the end of the episode. Didn't really see it coming at all, to be 100% honest with you. And I think it works well. I'm curious to see if they have the capability to have it pay off and make it worthwhile and make it interesting, or if we're going to be back here at the start of next episode and it's going to kind of just be one of those things that are just pushed to the side. There still is competency in their writing, so I'm assuming that the latter will be the case, or I'm sorry, the former will be the case. But yeah, I think this was a twist and something that I think that this storyline needed. So I am very happy that it's here.
Yeah, and always big fan of these medieval detective type storylines. I'm
Yep.
very interested to see what Damon ends up doing. Damon's having a tough season, Dylan. His boy, Simon Strong, gets gutted,
Very sad,
which
yeah.
equally gutted him, and now his boy on the Gold Cloaks gets killed, and he's losing friends left and right. It's not been a fun season for Damon in any stretch.
Speaking of TikTok edits, the Simon Strong edits and kind of what we're getting from that, the montages of our sweet large boy is very nice. It was not a scene I enjoyed in terms of somebody getting killed. It was maybe a little sad. Yeah, Damon, I think I was, oddly enough, as I'm sitting here putting down Heston Condal, I was actually a fan of the Riverland storyline for Damon in season 2. And I know a lot of people were not, and I thought it was very interesting. I think the fact that the payoff to that in the end was kind of like the cliffhanger to season 2, I think is why a lot of people were frustrated, because they were kind of, for 3-4 weeks, people were yelling, where is this plot line going? I enjoyed it, even though ultimately they keep introducing the prophecy of a Song of Ice and Fire, and we know how all that ends. And it's kind of like nobody liked how that story ended in this showverse. So like, I don't know why we need to keep heavily investing into that, which that part also is kind of like a addition from the books, where this like heavy emphasis on the prophecy of a Song of Ice and Fire, and having that included. And obviously we've had several flashbacks to Dany and the dragons, or not flashbacks, flash forwards, I guess.
Yeah,
in the
right.
show.
Flashbacks for us,
yes,
but flash forwards for the characters. Yeah.
And so I have liked that for the most part for what it's done for Damon, but I think we're getting more of who Damon really is, where he is loyal to Rhaenyra, but he also he wants to be the one that kind of has final say, even if the final say is through Rhaenyra. So I think kind of getting back to that, as long as they don't do overkill with him wanting to do his own thing and him not necessarily obeying Rhaenyra like he did in the very beginning of the episode, saying that he has other things he needs to do first before he goes back to the Riverlands. I think that's where they were going, right? They were going to the Riverlands to look for
Aemon.
Aemon and Vhagar. So once again, it adds, I guess, another element to make the King's Landing storyline a little bit more fun. I'm not sure where ultimately they're going to wind up with where Daemon's going to be at the end of the season. I feel like they're trying to shape Daemon up to turn into be this bad guy ultimately, or somebody that is going to get a lot of people killed, which I guess is like, it's not the most absurd thing to assume that how this is going to play out. Daemon will get a lot of people killed. He has not shied away at all from sparing the lives of people that he views lesser than him. I think we'll wait and see where this plays out. I like Daemon. I think Matt Smith, right? It's Matt Smith is
Yep.
is somebody that I will leave this series from. There's actually a lot of people, and so I'm glad I bring up this part too. But Matt Smith is one of the people that I wasn't really super exposed to before House of the Dragon. I know he was the Doctor for a while, and Doctor Who. I know he was also in The Crown, right? Was that the
Yep.
Netflix series about the actual royal family in England? And so I know he has, I think my only other experience with Matt Smith, and I forget if this was before or after House of the Dragon started, was what was that Dracula vampire
Morbius.
movie that was like
Yeah, I think
the
that was
crazy
after
dance he
season
does in that.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a huge Matt Smith fan. I'm very excited. I think he's actually in the new Star Wars or is he in the Starfighter movie? I believe he is.
Cool.
With Ryan Gosling. I could be making that up. I think he is in a Star Wars movie coming out. So I'm a big Matt Smith fan. I think he's a fantastic actor. I like show Daemon more than I like book Daemon. So that's another plus to something the show has done. I want to see the payoff ultimately to what happens with Daemon for this season, because there's a few places I think that they can go with it, and I don't necessarily like where some of those end up. And I think that next episode we're going to kind of get a good understanding of what Daemon's path forward is going to be the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think really inspired casting.
Yeah.
As you said, I only knew him as Doctor Who, where he's like goofy, and he is so good in this show, which I think that Daemon is probably the most interesting character on the board, followed by Aemon a little bit, which let's talk a little bit about Aemon here. So Aemon is now kind of going through a similar story that Daemon went through last season, being, situated at the spooky castle with Alice Rivers, who is also one of my favorite characters. I love weird witchy character in these shows, but I think we get, for the first time, Aemon is kind of like presented as this villain, a bit larger than life character in the books, where he's like very calculated. Obviously, we don't get his POV. We get a little bit of insight into his psyche and why he acts the way he does, and how he really felt like cast aside despite being an incredible warrior and having a cunning mind and being somebody who would have been, a better king. And here he is with his, we'll get to it later, but his lazy sack of shit brother being the king, and then his younger brother also becoming like a king. And so he's very looked over and very like lost despite the bravado that he portrays.
And I think now he's, if I read that, he's under the influence that his mother and his sister are probably dead, right? Because he has no suspicion that his mother basically completely sold him out to the blacks, to the Black Targaryens. It's kind of funny because Aemon really is kind of, he is like a dollar store version of Daemon, and like that's kind of what he's always wanted to kind of just be this Daemon poser in a way. And so him now going to the Riverlands to have this storyline at Harrenhal with Alice is it is funny because I didn't really consider that side of it now until you just said that. Similar to the Daemon, I'm very curious of where this will ultimately end up and where they're going with it. Alice is a character that was one of the more intriguing characters of Fire and Blood, I thought. And I think that, and I think adding a little bit more of her to the show makes sense, because I think that she is a good character and she's interesting. Once again, where the payoff will come, whether that's good or bad, I am looking forward to seeing that. But they've definitely done a better job of humanizing Aemon in the show. Obviously, they did when Lucerys is killed by Vhagar. It's more so of an accident by Aemon to then it kind of, and it was an awakening to him too, that these aren't just pets. These
Right.
dragons are weapons of mass destruction, and they have their own. They're completely sentient beings, and like they will do what they want. And I think that is something that they're continuing to run with in this season. Obviously, where we saw with Sheep Stealer, also with Rhaena, a storyline I do not love. That is something we can talk about when we talk about book spoilers.
Mhm.
But I think that they are very much hitting home from the very beginning that these dragons have a mind of their own and will do what they want for the most part. And so humanizing Aemon in that way instead of just making him a straight up villain, I have liked for the most part. Aemon has kind of been completely obsolete in this season, really up until now. Obviously, outside of killing our friend Simon Strong, which was very unfortunate. Aemon really has not that, and the kissing the mother scene that I think everybody kind of hated. Aemon really has kind of been pointless up
Yeah.
until now. So I'm glad he's getting a little bit more movement. I want to see where it goes from here, and I think I have an idea. I'm not entirely sure. Once again, I want that payoff to be there. And it's also like I don't know where Vhagar is. Like that's a whole different kind of mystery of what's going on there. Like dragons just starting to get up and run away. So I like it. I anytime we're in the Riverlands and Harrenhal, I always find it very interesting, and because it's really only very very quickly touched on in the Game of Thrones show, kind of like Harrenhal and why it's incredibly spooky and haunted and the history behind it. So spending more time there, I have enjoyed. I wonder though if we will get an Aemond seeing the visions similar to what Damon saw, if any of that will be different. I hope that's something that we do get, because it would kind of make everything with Alice seem to pay off a little bit more. Keep talking
Yeah.
about payoff. That's as you can tell. I think I've said payoff now already like 20 times. There are a lot of plot lines I am really liking in this show right now, but I am not fully confident they all will have a proper payoff, because we've seen several other storylines in this show that were even maybe less interesting, that there was just like no payoff to at all, or it was like a very very lackluster payoff. So like
Mhm.
I don't want to keep hitting home the term payoff, but like that's really what it is, because ultimately the payoff of Game of Thrones sucked and everybody hated it. And once again, that's what I keep going back to, of why are they making the prophecy of A Song of Ice and Fire so prominent in the show, when in the showverse we know it is like so terribly played out. So that's like I am like skeptical, but ultimately I like what the show is doing right now with like the Aemon storyline. I'm curious. I'm curious of if it will be a good payoff, or if we're going to be sitting here at the end of the season saying, why did we spend so much time with Aemon in the Riverlands, Vhagar running away, him and Alice? Like, what was the point of that? And like, I'm very
Yeah.
scared that is going to be the case, but I can't predict the future, nor can I judge a show on what hasn't happened yet. And so I like the storyline. I like Aemon. I want more of him, and I think that his ultimate fate will be rewarded by us spending more time with him and him becoming a little bit more of a humanized character.
Yeah, because I do feel like, with the book, it's very much like he's just kind of, a destructive force. But now we're actually getting to see the man behind the legend of Aemon One Eye, and I think that's great. And I think this scene where he saves Alice from being, assaulted was really great, very badass. It shows that he is a very dangerous character, even when he's wounded here.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. And like we saw him quickly kind of cut down the strong sons. Even though I wasn't a big fan of him all of a sudden just getting shanked by like a butter knife at the end of that, and that's resulting here. But he is a very very skilled swordsman, a skilled soldier, and it's cool to see him do that and not just riding on the back of the biggest dragon in the world.
Yeah, that's like the trouble with having a show about Dragon Wars. It's like they're so much as you called them, a weapon of mass destruction. That is like, okay, what do you have to be good at swordsmanship in this world, or can you just burn down everything? But we'll see where that goes. Let's go to the younger brother here, Darren Targaryen, living a psychological horror under his what would it even be, uncle?
It's his
Uh,
uncle. Yes,
yeah,
his like
Ormond
second, or his
Hightower.
like yeah, his like great uncle or his second uncle, whatever that would be called. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, sorry. Go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
No, and I just, people have been calling him Glenn Howerton of
The Golden God.
Westeros,
Yes.
which love that. Uh, you know, I think we've all known people like this who are like just barely holding it together, and you have to walk on eggshells around. Sucks that he's basically his ward and has to deal with this perpetually.
It has completely ruined the character for me in the sense that now all I see is Glenn Howerton, Dennis Reynolds
Yeah,
as Ormond, the Golden God, especially when he freaks out last episode about being abandoned by Vagar and starts smashing the table. That was a very
yeah,
Dennis Reynolds movement there. I love the storyline. Love the actor for Ormond. They have like definitely made him comedically like a villain at this point, right?
yes,
And I
yeah,
think I understand why you need to do that for a show. I think we need to have ultimately where I do wish they did a better job of balancing like the greens and the blacks being like a little bit more I hate these people and like these people on each side rather than like this side bad, this side good. But I think making Ormond this like overly villainous character is something we need. Like I think the world completely united in hatred for Ramsay Bolton
yeah. I was about to say we need our Ramsey in the
and for
show.
Joffrey Baratheon. Like these were true villains. So I think as they humanize people like Aemon Moore, you do need to have people that are pure villains. I think there are going to be people on the side of the blacks that they will make pure villains, and I think that that's something that is going to come up. But I think making somebody on the greens a pure villain like Ormond is something that was needed overall. I'm really enjoying it. I like the Darren storyline a lot. I like what they're doing with it. Once again, something very similar to where they are kind of doing some of their own stuff here rather than what went on with the book. And I think it's working for the most part. But I think I think the actor playing Ormond is caring. The only other thing I ever remember seeing him in was he was in the Little Women, the most recent Little Women movie. I say most recent. I think it came out like 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, that's the only other movie I remember ever seeing him in. But he's
Great
been
movie, honestly.
great movie. He's been a very good actor in this season so far. I think he's been a very commanding presence and kind of really doing a good job carrying that storyline where you have Darren, who is his young ward. Who this is obviously our first season spending time with him too. I'm really enjoying where that's going, and I think kind of having a general idea of where this season is going to end up. I think doing these building blocks now with Ormond and Darren is paying off really well. Once again, payoff. This is something that I feel like is already paying off, and I'm really enjoying the storyline. And I love Ormond. I think Ormond's a fun, ridiculous, villainous character that this show is going to benefit from, and I feel like we're seeing the benefits and payoff from that.
Yeah, I really like to we get a kind of insight into the minds of these houses like the High Towers, who prior to the Targaryens coming to the continent, they were kings. They were in charge, and they got overthrown not because were outwitted, but because they basically got strong armed by these giant dragons. And it feels like the High Towers have been on this, multi-generational tract of we need to get power by infiltrating the Targaryens and usurping them. And I think that adds such an interesting layer to everything. And with Darren basically being caught between two worlds here as a High Tower and a Targaryen, I love it. I think this is some of the best stuff we have going in this season.
I agree. I think kind of making him this like racist to the Targaryens
Yeah,
and
he
like
is.
overall like him kind of becoming this Westeros supremacist of
Yeah,
sorts, of like pure
yeah,
blood Westerosian.
yeah. He
I agree.
says
I like that.
Darren is like tainted with his
Yeah.
Targaryen blood. It's insane.
Which, like, the high tower is coming from Old Town, the Citadel, and like what is basically kind of like the educational hub of what they think is the most civilized continent in the world.
Yeah,
The level of arrogance and the feel of superiority that I feel like the higher towers would have makes a lot of sense for kind of what Orman's saying and why he thinks like that. So I
yeah.
agree. I loved
They're
it.
playing the strategic Game of Thrones. They got the Maesters, they got the High Septon, all under their influence. But now they need the dragons, or at least to take out the Targaryens, which I think is so fun.
I, I,
Wayne.
I
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I was gonna say I think one of the fun things, and this is once again, this is a pure guess by me because we've already mentioned the whole storyline with the City Watch is a show based invention. My thought of what is happening though is that even though they are making Orman this like overly villainous character, I think I think like the twist is going to be that what happened to that City Watch was not the doing of the High Towers or the Greens. Is that it was either the people of the city starting to rebel against Rhaenyra and kind of using a way to shadow that to make it seem like it's the Greens' fault, and or it is the religion, the faith, and like their people doing this for what we saw in episode 3 of Rhaenyra kind of like pushing aside the faith and like their what they want to do, and not give them the support that they feel that they're owed. I wonder if, like, to what you said about the harpies from Game of Thrones, that this is going to be like that like big reveal at the end of the season that it is actually not the Greens, it's not Ormond. This is like the city and the faith rebelling against the Black Targaryens.
Yeah, I definitely think there is like an undercurrent of anti-Rhaenyra-ness going here. And then you have there's like that scene where the maid like went to that guy in
Mm-hmm.
he sent out a raven to Ormond. That guy was the like head of the defenses that Allison uh said to like stand down and let
Yep.
Rhaenyra in. So I think, they're basically doing like this insurgency of like, okay, here's a bunch of gold, give it to people, have them basically fuck shit up and make Rhaenyra's life horrible. And they're using like that existing hatred for Rhaenyra as like, basically stoke the flames of a potential insurrection within King's Landing, which I think is super interesting because again, this like this is the dance of the dragons,
Mm-hmm.
but we're getting like this warfare where it's like, okay, we can't fight, you know, Caraxes head on. We need to destabilize stuff and have, Rhaenyra's rule fall that way, which I think is awesome.
And there was a mention of the coins too, right?
Yes.
The new Darren currency, the Darren Doge that's going around
Yeah.
Westeros and King's
Invest
Landing at
now.
the moment. I feel like the High Towers are smart enough, and Ormond has come across as potentially smart enough to realize that you can leverage, if it is the faith, I guess you can leverage the faith with the money that they basically want from the crown that they're not getting at the moment.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
just
like,
like spin Rhaenyra out. Like she sees
yeah.
like, oh my God, like there's another, person trying to take my throne. Like, what the hell?
And on the flip side too, of in terms of like a viewer, like those were Damon's boys, right?
Yep.
Those were his really the only people that I feel like
He
he's
basically
been
made
friendly
the
with.
gold
Yeah.
cloaks. Yeah.
So he's lost Simon Strong. He's lost all his gold cloak bros. He is in a tough spot. But yes,
Yeah.
Gwaine. So I guess
Speaking
if
of
you
tough
want to
spot.
move on, tough spots.
Yeah.
Gwaine is a fantastic character. Another actor I really enjoy in this. The Gwaine Kristen Cole storyline is one of those ones that I feel like is probably being dragged out a little bit too much to get us through the season. But I did really enjoy this episode with them, and it brings me to what is my overall viewpoint of the past 2 episodes, which may not be the most popular. I've really enjoyed these bridging episodes because I feel like they have been articulately done to where I feel like each scene that we've gotten these past 2 weeks has really mattered to where the story is going. And it does remind me of those bridge episodes that we got early in Game of Thrones, where typically the first 1 or 2 episodes of each season were very action packed, which is like what we got here in this season. And then we have a couple of that bridge. Then there's like typically another escalation of the action. Then we have a few bridges. And I think that they have done that really well in this season, where it was probably something they did not do as well in season 2 overall, even though, like I said, I enjoyed the Damon and the Riverland storyline. I think that they are doing really well with those this season. How the House of the Dragon viewership as a whole, I think a lot of people have grown so accustomed to just action, 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 because like really the entire first season was like we're playing the highlights from everything that has happened during these range. Like this big event happened, this big event happened, this big event happened, and that got us all the way up to the end to Lucerys being killed, and then we have season 2 of them saying, we got to really flush this show out now to get 2 to 3 more seasons. So like we have one battle here, we have Rhaenys dying with her dragon, we have Aegon being burned, but like that was pretty much all that happened in season 2 in terms of like big massive events, right? So and I think that, like I said, season 2, I think everybody's pretty much in agreement. Season 2 was kind of like a massive, like really kind of just led on the audience and really gave us no payoff to the payoff that we're getting now in season 3. But now that we're in season 3 and we're starting to get more of these bridge episodes to bridge us to the end, I think it's 2 more seasons. It's this season and next season, right? That's it. I think that's what they agreed to. That's all I can really see this story, the Dance of the Dragon storyline, going. As far as whether they then take it beyond that, I would actually be interested to see if that actually happens or not, because I think they could do that. But if they try to take this storyline beyond the dance, I would be curious to see that. But I feel like the dance can only exist this season, next season, like that's it, unless they start really, really, really going off book and start adding more of their own elements. But long story short, this stuff with Cole and Gwen, I've actually have really enjoyed. They're kind of like they've turned into this guerrilla warfare fighting unit. Like they have no food, they have no water. They're going to try to kill as many people as they can between now and then. They're trying to get back and hook up with Ormond and that crew. I've really enjoyed it. I think making Cole kind of this emo sad boy who just hates Rhaenyra and feel like he's been completely wronged by her has been interesting, but I think overall it's worked. And I think that Gwaine is one of those real improvements from the book to the show, where his character has been more fleshed out. I think the actor playing him is very, very, very likable. I think that the scenes we've gotten with him and Cole and kind of like their like very strange bromance that has kind of like blossomed from them being on the road and in the battlefield together has worked out really well. And it's just there were certain things I thought were going to happen in this episode that I think that they're bridging to, that I assume will happen in the next episode, the episode after that. But I feel like that will be rewarded with the emotional journey that's going to take us on by getting these scenes with them in this episode. I think also at the same time, the very beginning of this episode, the very first scene we get is Gwaine and Cole and their forces kind of infiltrating
Starks and
the wolves from the north. It's not our boy Kragan Stark that we saw.
No, it's Roddy the Ruin.
Yes, it's him and his men. Who is that actor? I really like a lot. He was from Sons of Anarchy.
He's so good in this role. Like
he's
perfect casting.
He is a northerman he's somebody from the north that very much I imagine. I think he would have fit in very well with a lot of other scenes in like Game of Thrones. You can see we are always pro Stark, pro the North here on this podcast. Everybody should be pro Stark. Starks are kind of like the humanization and like the real family out of all these families. But this is a story I have a very good idea of how it's going to end and how we're going to wind up. And I am enjoying this time that we're getting now. I feel like maybe a lot of people are once again viewing this as unnecessary. Like we're just filling dead air to get to a big event. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I really love how Christian Cole's psyche has just been entirely broken by the realization of what a war with dragons is
Yep.
and how much destruction there is. Like, he in this episode says he considers himself the greatest warrior in the Seven Kingdoms. Up for debate for sure, but he's definitely up there, and he knows like that doesn't matter at all when you're facing down a dragon, you know. And so he just wants to die an honorable death despite living a life where he's really forsaken like every vow he's ever taken.
And I think it's kind of something too that really adds weight to what Allison did with going to Rhaenyra, kind of selling her family and they're selling her sons and their men upriver. And I think like the toll and like the realization that like Cole and his men, they've basically have been abandoned. They're kind of
Mhm.
they're no one's coming to save them at this point. I think they've kind of they've accepted that. Same thing with Ormond and with Darren. Like they're on their own. They have to start making their own moves now. I do wonder, which was something I didn't really consider when you brought that up when I first watched it, was the rest of the High Towers and the Greens finding out about it, what Allison has done and asking them to stand down. I wonder if that's something that we'll get in this season
Mm,
and
yeah.
the fallout from that, because ultimately the relationship between Allison and Rhaenyra and what's going on there feels very strange, feels very not something that's sustainable or is going to last. If it does, is that good storytelling? I don't know. We'll talk about that in book spoilers. Uh, and I think that when you look at it now and you kind of take that context to what is going on with Cole and with Gwen, like they're basically like they now have men dying of exhaustion, right?
Yeah.
Of walking
It
through
reminded me
hell.
of like a Vietnam movie when they're
It did.
trudging through the mud and the rain. Like, I thought it was so great.
And so stuff like that I'm really enjoying. And it was not it's stuff like this is not stuff that we've been getting in previous seasons. We got some like and I know we have battles being cut out and stuff like that. And like we quickly touched on a lot of the stuff going on in the Riverlands last season. And that really we're not getting any sort of payoff for a while from. And so I think seeing this now is in what's going on. Like you said, I enjoyed it. Like you said, it reminds me of something like a Vietnam movie from something like Platoon. They're in the rain, they're in the swamps, they're dealing with bugs, exhaustion. They
Yeah, they're
really have
getting leeches on the like
leeches.
horrible.
Yeah. So I'm surprised that they are taking this story and dragging out as much as they are. But I guess now that I've seen what they're doing, I understand why they're doing it. And I enjoy Gawain a lot. Like I said, I think that the actor playing him is very likable. And I've always liked the actor playing Cole. I think that Cole, the
Oh, he's great.
character,
Yeah.
is very easy to not like and hate, even though they're adding a little bit more nuance to him now. That's a character I actually think that was maybe a little bit better in the book versus the show. But I like the actor who plays Cole a lot. I'm actually very surprised he has not gotten more bigger roles since season one, because he's a very handsome guy. He's attractive. He is, for the most part, I think a pretty good actor, even though we've been stuck with him being a little bit of an emo boy for about a season now at this point.
Yeah, if for anyone listening and if you haven't seen it, check out Task. He's one of the main characters on that, also an
Yep.
HBO show, and he's awesome on that. And so I do think that he will have a one of the bigger post House of the Dragon career of all these actors, because yeah, he's great.
But that's pretty much my thought on what's going on now for them. I
Yeah.
think that we'll be sitting here next week having a little bit more to talk about for
Yes.
that storyline.
No, totally agree there. Should we talk about Allison and her scheming in this episode?
Yes, I think Allison and what is going on with her and Helena is something I actually. Do you want to save that to usher us into book spoiler talk and quickly
Okay.
touch
Yeah.
on Aegon and Laris real quick? Because I
Yeah. Yeah.
think for sure this is what the storyline I am most enjoying, most paying attention to. The actor playing Aegon, I'm trying to pull up his name. Actor, hold on. because I think that because we want to talk about standout stars. So Tom Glynn Carney, I think that he is the standout star for me from this entire show. Obviously, we had Amelia Alcock from season 1. We had Patty
Candace
Constantine,
Constantine, yeah.
who was the other big standout star from season 1. Olivia Cook's been fantastic. We talked about Matt Smith. Emma Darcy is
Yeah,
great.
especially the second episode this season. Anna
Yes.
Darcy killed it.
I think Tom Glenn Carney is the breakout star that's going to come from this show. He maybe not bigger than Amelia Alcock. I think Amelia Alcock now being starring, she's Supergirl.
Supergirl.
She's gonna
Yeah.
she kind of her stardom really took off in season 1. Now she's already getting bigger roles. But Tom Glenn Carney, man, what he can act. I think the storyline has been fantastic. It's a complete addition for the most part, a complete addition from the books. For the most part, in the books, when we get Laris and Aegon, they kind of just disappear for a period of time in the books. We don't really get much to fill in between what happens when they're gone and when if there is a return. I think that everything we've gotten so far has been really interesting, and I think that at the very end of this, we see Aegon get a little pep in his step and shank the guy that I just assumed was going to be a real problem for him and Laris, and all of a sudden
he had to do it
dead out of nowhere.
No other option in that moment. Like, he had to kill that guy.
I was still surprised by it. Did not think he had him in it. But Aegon really is. I think that he is the easiest to root for character currently going. I think Laris was pretty spot on with what he said to Aegon, but I think it was necessary for him to hear it. And I feel like Aegon now is if you're asking me to pick a side, I am taking. I wouldn't even consider Aegon part of the Greens anymore. I'm taking Aegon's side. I think the Greens are pretty much now limited to the High Towers, right? We talk about the Greens; it's the High Towers. All the Aemond, Aegon, and Darren. They're all their own things. So the Greens are basically now Darren and Ormond in the High Towers. Aemond's basically become his own thing, and Aegon's now become his own thing. I think that this storyline is really, really good. A really nice addition for the show. I think that it's really carried some of these episodes in terms of how intrigued I am. And it's just, like I said, I think Tom Glenn Carney is just a fantastic actor. I'm really enjoying him. I really want to see him in more. And he did such a good job too. I saw somebody else say this. He really is kind of getting that Jaime Lannister treatment of, he was so easy to hate early on in the show, seasons 1, early in season 2, and then obviously in season 2 he has his son die, he gets burned, he has his son get murdered, completely decapitated, then he gets burned by his own brother. He thinks now his dragon's dead. He's kind of done this complete 180 from where he was he's gone from the highest high to lowest lows, really. This is where I think Sarah Hess and Ryan Condal. I have no idea who actually wrote this episode, because I know Sarah Hess got the credits for the first 2 or 3, whereas I'm not sure who's like the official writer of this episode. But this is where, as much as I think Condal and Hess have gone wrong, and I don't really want to spend too much time shitting on them in this episode, even though I think it's deserved. This is not an episode to do it though for. But I think that they have gotten this Aegon storyline completely right, and it's been something that I've done really well. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with the fact of how good the acting has been. I think that's Tom Glenn Carney deserves a lot of credit.
No, agreed. And the speech from Laris was very cathartic for us as viewers, and hopefully he can take it to heart. And with the help of our pal Tywin Lannister, who did not die after being shoved off of the boat, they'll be able to figure some stuff out. What do you think of that? The return of Tywin Lannister?
When it comes to anything to do with TV, I if you don't see somebody actually die, don't assume they're dead. And so it's not, I didn't expect him to pop up there, to be 100% honest with you. Did not expect him to show up there. I just assumed he was not actually dead though. So
I mean, the shallows, that was the whole point. The boat was sinking because of the shallows pass, and we already had the sea snake live in a very similar situation. So
once again, I was not here for episode 1 to talk about it with you. Episode 1 was not a good episode of TV, and I will stick by that. It was typical. I thought the CGI looked terrible. I thought that sure, we can say HBO screwed the show in a little bit. kneecapping it at 8 episodes last season. They needed 2 more to kind of tell the story, and I think they were told very late in the process, right, that this was happening.
Yes, yeah. Like they were
So
shooting the show,
yeah,
and it was during the writer's strike, so they couldn't even adjust the
so
scripts.
I'm not going to pile on them too much. First episode, I did not think was very good at all. I thought the entire battle, I saw people say it looked great. I thought it looked terrible. I thought the CGI looked terrible. Anyway, I didn't put too much weight on what was actually happening and did not think that he was actually dead. And I like this actor. And I also didn't realize.
I do too. He's great.
I didn't realize he was in Oppenheimer. He was the incident. I forget what his name was in Oppenheimer, but he was the guy that went to Oppenheimer to try to get him to give him information to give to the Russians or the people that were communists. Good actor. Glad to see him back. We've already seen him killed once in this show
as well.
Yes,
very good.
I have not seen Vikings, but yes. Right, we've already seen his twin brother decapitated at the start of the season, so it's nice to see the actor still there.
Yeah, it was like, oh man, did he die twice in one episode? But no,
it was very much because it happened out of nowhere. They showed him out of nowhere too because they showed the battle off screen.
Right.
So seeing him, it was like, didn't we just watch him potentially drown last episode? I kind of forgot he had a twin. But I'm glad to see the actor back. Just was not expecting to see him in this scenario, and now I think that this is a cool. I'm very, very interested to see the path forward for Aegon and Larys in this storyline now with him involved. Obviously, the Lannisters have money. Everybody needs money currently. So it's cool. And like I said, this is the most intriguing storyline for me. I'm really enjoying it. I'm watching it pretty much completely fresh of where it's going because it was not included in the book. I know it's going to end, I think. But in terms of if they run with that ending for this show, which part of me makes me think they might not. But we know I have a general idea, and so I'm really enjoying this path we're getting now here. And like I said, the acting is just really very good on this side of the show.
Yep. All right, let's talk about Allison. She's still got a little motion here, Dylan. She can still manipulate people. She is maybe potentially turning Visseria against Rhaenyra here. What do you think of her storyline this episode?
Yeah, so this is one I don't know where this is going. And I feel like
especially with that last scene.
I will give it a spoiler-free take before we eventually get into spoilers. I don't know where this is going. Not ideal to be walking around kind of the back passageway of the keep in the pitch black dark. Not sure how that's going to pay out. Not ideal. I think that her speech and her kind of to switch everything to the White Worm to kind of get eyes off of Helena was well done. And I think the White Worm, another person, I don't really understand where they're going with their story either. I think that it is a interesting potential partnership that I think narratively could work out in a very in an interesting way with Rhaenyra and kind of creating that triangle. Because like I think we all agree this relationship with Allison and Rhaenyra can't like continue of them kind of being like semi-friendly, like everything's all cool. Like it just can't. I think naturally it has to end badly for both of them and their relationship. It's not something that can persist. We can talk about the book and all. One of the things that I think the show did very, very good, and it was one of the immediate changes I think pretty much everybody acknowledged and was really well done, was that they made Rhaenyra and Alicent the same age and they made them best friends in the show. That paid off immediately. The two actresses early on, Millie Alcock, and I'm forgetting the other actress's name that played young Alicent. Fantastic, good chemistry. I think the storyline worked out way better for them being friends. Whereas in the book, they were Alicent was older than Rhaenyra, I think, by like 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of viewed by Rhaenyra as this woman that basically swept in and capitalized on her father's grief, which is still kind of the case, except the show, the High Towers had a little bit more play in terms of that happening. And the show feels like it is pushing more towards whether for better or for worse of, this was even with a woman ruler or a woman having this much influence, this was still a man's world and men were driving and forcing these women into things. I think that they can play that off really well in this show. And I think that they can also play it off to the point where at the end, we're just kind of rolling our eyes saying, okay, like, because one of the problems with this show is that, and I think Allison and is one of the biggest characters that have been affected by this was like everything's an accident, right? We've seen so many things now where
Yes.
nothing's been like intentional on screen. Everything's been an accident. Things have been misunderstandings. And I think that it's kind of like where I talk is where it works for Aemon at the end of season 1, killing Lucerys, being a complete accident because he really ultimately has no true control over his dragon. That was a change I enjoyed, instead of just making him just this vicious kin
Yeah.
killer that he was in the book. But then we kind of went down, like I said, we spiraled into a domino effect of like
Yes.
comedically almost everything in season 2 is an accident. And then we've seen a few things now, even with Rhaena and Sheep Stealer, that being a complete accident, completely removing the character of Nettles that was very popular in the book. And a real key character to Daemon's storyline, replacing her with Rhaena. Don't know how that's going to play out at all. And her being like directly involved with the death of Jace. So it's everything has been an accident. I think now we're getting into a little bit more. There's some like direct implications of people's consequences to people's actions, and I think that what is going to happen now here with Alicent and the White Worm, it's going to happen with one of two things. The White Worm is going to completely betray Alicent, and I think that will be the undoing of Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship. Or it's going to be the flip side. I think that we're going to then see Alicent realize that she can have power or some sort of sway over Rhaenyra, and then that's her way to get back to helping out her family. Because I think that really, if they leave this storyline with Alicent betrayed her family, betrayed her sons, she thinks one son is dead or escaped or whatever. I kind of forget what they actually think happened to Aegon, what she thinks happened to Aegon. And obviously she was completely selling Aemond out because she thinks Aemond's this psycho, which she's partially right. And I think that
Yeah, not wrong. That's for sure.
I think maybe that was like the intention of that scene with the kiss, that like, that maybe that she's worried about him. Like, I don't know. I don't know what the point of her completely selling out her sons rather than being completely dedicated to them. I don't know if you want to get into the spoilers yet for the books. I'll let you get your spoiler-free takeout first, but there's a lot there that makes me very, very worried.
Yeah, I mean, I think she doesn't give a shit about like her kids in the same way. I think at best she pities Helena and feels bad for her. But you see it when Helena's like, okay, what about my daughter who I love? I can't leave without her. And Allison's like, what do you mean? You gotta leave. Like, she has this disconnect, and obviously a terrible situation where she was basically forced into this marriage with like a 40-year-old guy as like a 16-year-old or whatever, 14-year-old. I don't know. She was young in that first season. So that definitely makes it like she doesn't have this connection with her kids, but that's probably her biggest flaw in my opinion. One that's not present in the book. I feel in the book she loves her kids very much, but yeah, let's get into spoilers. Hopefully they'll be able to get out of the castle walls, although not a great situation that they're stuck in. But you said that you had a lot of opinions and grievances. Let's just, floor is yours here. Whatever you want to say about the adaptation, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what you have previously talked about this season or in terms of changes from I think that the change from the book to the show of kind of having this rekindle of you can't really call it a friendship at this point, but rekindling of two former friends, and Alicent selling out her family to not necessarily help Rhaenyra, more so to save her and Elena and Elena's daughter. I think that was a big mistake. I think now, but if they're able to then take this storyline, and we're going to have a very sad ending where I assume we were going to get Helena killing herself in this episode. We did not.
Speaking of accidents,
yes,
I for a second was like, oh my god, she's going to fall out of the window trying to look at the moon. Thank god that was not what happened.
And now it's like, I don't know where, my assumption is what's going to happen is they're going to get caught, right? They don't have the light, that the light is going to be their undoing. And whether that's going to be Damon sneaking back into the castle through the back passageways and catching them there. I just don't think they're not sneaking out. If they do sneak out, then it's kind of like, okay, what are we doing here? Because I don't understand what the payoff they're trying to go for now is with Allison and Rhaenyra and Helena. Once again, I just assumed Helena was going to kill herself there. I thought that was going to be her way out. I don't know if that was a nod to it of her telling Helena to go look out the window and see what's going on there. I just don't fully understand what I think that they have really kind of ruined Allison as a character, which is very unfortunate because I think Olivia Cook really, really could have done a good job being that very hateable kind of like, I don't know if you've seen Tangled, Rapunzel, like that Mother Gothel character of like she's like this, she's like this ominous, just like selfish, not good person, but she does love and care about her kids. And like they have decided to not do that. She's already pretty much sold out two of her kids. She basically sold off the other one, Darren. She kind of sold him out completely when she saw that the imposter for Darren was not actually him, and immediately cluing Rhaenyra into that. So, to say the least, she has not been a good mother to three of her four kids, right? But she's trying to be a good mother to Helena, bad grandmother to Helena's child, and I do not know where they're going to go with this story. It makes me very nervous. I don't understand it. I assume / hope in the end there is going to be another breakup between Allison and Rhaenyra. I think it's going to be via the White Worm. I don't love the White Worm all of a sudden becoming this like this the I think a lot of the frustration with Ryan Condal, I feel like he does not understand. I don't think he understands Fire and Blood for the most part, and I think that he took it upon himself to want to do his own thing, and now he just says shit. Like he says a lot of stuff of like, oh, you know, it is like the double D's, and like, oh, Danny sort of just forgot about the Iron Fleet. Like there's no like weight to what he's doing. Where at most part they said that like they didn't want to have Damon like cheat on Rhaenyra with Nettles. And then that was like that why they didn't want to do that storyline. But then they included the White Worm and Rhaenyra kind of having like that affair. So it's like that is like so it's like so then you're okay with vilifying Rhaenyra in that sense, or it's like it's okay that she's having it with the White Worm because we've now made Damon this like he is ultimately a bad guy. Like I don't know where the payoff. I don't know where the story is going, and like is ultimately we're going to end up with Allison and Rhaenyra hating each other again. And it's like then why do we need all this? Why could we not have a season of Rhaenyra essentially getting back at Allison and kind of beginning to torture her and her family for what she's done to her? Because once again, Rhaenyra is not a good guy in any of this story, and they have very much not done a good job of getting us to that point. And I think that is a issue. And I think that if they continue to kind of keep up with Rhaenyra being the good guy, the Greens and Ormond and all them being the overly bad guys, we need to root for this side versus one side. I know, you know, each story we need, especially in fiction, we need a hero, we need a villain. Like, I understand that there could be heroes and villains on both. And I feel like they're kind of ushering us into that side of it. But like, Rhaenyra is not a good person. She's not a good queen. I think that they are very desperately trying to lead us on the assumption that Rhaenyra is this good person. She's this person that was that fucked over by the laws of men and her family's dynasty. And like now she's going to be a victim to that. And I don't agree with that because I think that ultimately Rhaenyra was the villain of her story in Fire and Blood, and Alicent was the villain of hers. And I think everybody else in between were used as stepping stools for both of them. And I think everyone has their own agenda in the story and in the book and in the show. But I just feel like they now have very clearly on one-sided wanted to make Alicent and Rhaenyra look much better for their characters, and then we're now making all these other characters completely like overly comedically the bad guys or the villains. And Damon he's very easy to like. Matt Smith, fantastic actor, but like they have very much tried to drive towards Damon is like this scumbag piece of shit, and I don't know why they feel the need to do that so much, and I wonder if now this is going to become the catalyst that we have of Damon with the City Watch. He's now going to lose his mind, go to Tumbleton, be the one to try to burn Tumbleton down. The betrayal of the Dragon Seeds with Ulf and with Hugh Hammer is going to kind of be more sympathetic to them, which is like in the book. It very much is like it was almost like comedic how unfleshed out Ulf and Hugh were, and then like their betrayal to Rhaenyra was just kind of like, oh yeah, these were two fucking scumbags that they gave dragons to. This, like they're power hungry. This makes sense. And
Especially
now
Hugh seems like a very different character than he's portrayed in the book.
I feel very confident they're shaping Damon to be the bad. They've already had this relationship between Ulf and Damon where like clearly Damon fucking despises Ulf. Like he's like he basically like that like kind of like a high school bully character to Ulf because he's a real Targaryen, Ulf's not. And I think
despite them potentially being brothers here,
I think they are going to take that they're going to set Damon up to be this bad guy at Tumbleton. And I think they're going to make Hugh sympathetic. And maybe they're going to just make Ulf this like drunk bumblebutt that's upset because he couldn't get money to pay off all his like his buddies like tavern bills. But like I think ultimately they're going to
that Damon's going to go like too far, and that's why the Dragon Seeds are going to kind of betray. Okay, that makes sense, and I think that
at least for Hugh, which like because they have done such a good job of making Hugh this likable guy that I feel like if we only have,
I mean, his family is in Tumbleton, and maybe they get killed by Damon.
We have 3 episodes left. I don't see any sort of indication that Hugh is this bad guy that it's going to make this betrayal of Rhaenyra kind of him like this. He's this horrible person. I feel like they're going to make him the sympathetic character, which it could work. Maybe, sure.
Yeah,
like I said,
I think, if his family gets killed by Damon, I could see why he'd flip sides.
It was a part of the book, like I said, that I feel like was really lacking and did not have the emotional impact reading it. Whereas I feel like they can really have the emotional impact in the show. But
in the book, he's honestly kind of like a worse version of Robert, where he's like this big, hulked out guy who's just like, taking women and
kind of an asshole.
Prizes and shit. Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
And I with Game of Thrones, I could totally buy into Daenerys burning down the entire city, losing her mind. The problem is that we got to it too quick. It was not fleshed out.
Agreed.
So if this is something that happens with Hugh and with Ulf, where all of a sudden they're just like, nah, you know what? Fuck Rhaenyra and Damon. Yeah. Damon's mean. It's like, let's just burn. I'm going to get my wife out of here and burn down this town. Like something like that. Or is it going to be, once again, another misunderstanding? It's going to be a misunderstanding that who killed Ulf's wife or something like that. It's going to be a misunderstanding of who kills Darren and how Darren does. I'm not even convinced they're going to kill Darren, to be honest with you, in the Battle of Tumbleton. I feel like that. I feel like they're. So I have like 2 theories of what's going to play out the rest of the season. My first theory is that Butcher's Ball either has to be next week with Cole dying, or they're going
100%. It's next week,
or they are going to take Cole's death to the Battle of Tumbleton. Basically, the last episode is going to be an entire just like Cole's dead, Cole's dead, Ulf and Hugh are dead, or I think they might save the killing of Ulf and Hugh for the premiere of season 4 is what I think they're going to do. Helena's gonna kill herself in the finale. Rhaenyra and Alicent are gonna now be fighting. Damon's gonna be this psycho that we all have to worry about. Aegon has his drag. Like I don't know if they'll cluster all that into the final episode, but my theory, and I don't know, it's just a theory that I made up myself. It was nice to have some theories made up by your own rather than just riding off of things that you see first on the internet by smarter people. Right. My theory is that potentially they're pushing Cole's death to the Battle of Tumbleton and having that kind of be like this one final grand cap on the season. There's a very good chance we could be sitting here next week and Butcher's Ball happened and it was kind of like a sad ending to Cole's storyline and for Gwen. And I guess like the actor that plays Kristen Cole, has vented a lot of frustration publicly about what was done with his character in this season. And so with that, that leads me more to believe that we do get a very like, uh, I wonder if it happens at the very end of next episode where Cole just gets absolutely lit up by the Northerners, and that's kind of it. Which is like, if that is, it does feel like a lot of wasted time. That if we had potentially a little bit better writers on this show, they could have filled the time with Cole and with Gwen a little bit better. Even though, like I said, I've liked what they've done these past 2 episodes with them. But if ultimately they just end up killing him off, after 2 episodes of them on the run next week, like in terms of a visual for story, I don't think that'll make it super satisfying. We haven't really gotten him being a scumbag at all the past, season and a half, right? It's really kind of just he's been stuck now after that battle on the run. Now he's out of food. He's completely suffering. Like, is that going to be a satisfying ending for Cole? Like, it doesn't feel like it.
And I know, like, obviously there's that great line, like, I'll have no songs written about you, Kingmaker. But I do think, like, Cole's death is brave. Like, he rides out there to the 3 of them and he's like, I'll fight all 3 of you at once. And they just kill him. Like, it's not like he dies in a pathetic way, in my opinion. It's anticlimactic for sure, but like, he was brave to go out there and challenge all 3 of them to combat.
I'm curious how that will look. I guess my theory of them moving his death to Tumbleton is like, I'm not like, I wouldn't bet money on that. That's just kind of like what I think is potential. But I assume next week, they kind of hype us up to where he's going to be this big sword fighting battle for him. And I kind of hope maybe they actually start the battle and then they just realize they're not going to be able to beat him and they just shoot him with arrows. But my assumption is it's going to be him getting hyped up by Gwen, and then all of a sudden you hear like an arrow shot, and it just shows that he's just getting like lit up. And I wonder if but then that's going to be a whole nother of like the Northerners are going to become like these bad guys that like you as a viewer all of a sudden going to be rooting against, even though like, are they the bad guys? I don't know. So then it's like Rhaenyra's this great queen that we need to root for, but Daemon is working with all these bad guys around them. She like more people that she has no control over that are not her fault. Like, I think that they need to ultimately start pushing more to Rhaenyra of being, this is her fault. They've already started to really shape up that she's going to be a very shitty queen, and like the people are going to rebel against her like that. I think they're doing an okay job setting that up, even though I like that's kind of super in the background at the moment, and the situation with money and King's Landing and the food and all that. Like, you have to start pushing more bad things Rhaenyra's way to make her look bad. I'm not one of those people that are like, you gotta make Emma D'Arcy fat, put her in a fat suit to make Rhaenyra big old fat suit. Like, I don't think narratively there's a need to do that. Like, if you want to have a visualization that she's like this big gluttonous bastard of a queen, sure, but I don't think that it's like that. That's not the things I'm worried about with translation from book to show, is whether or not Rhaenyra needs to be a big old fatty boom batty. I think it's more so you need to start pushing things to her narratively that are on purpose. Like her beheading Otto Hightower, that was not something that makes her a bad queen, or like somebody that I'm like, oh, I can't really root for this person. That was such a victorious moment for her, and something that like I think nobody wanted Otto to live. Who gives a fuck about Otto? Otto sucks. No. I was like one of the 2 people that are to blame for this entire thing. It's him and Viserys, that like the 2 of like, this is all your faults. Basically, Viserys for being completely an idiot and not really seeing what was going to happen, and then Otto basically obviously being the one to want to drive to all this to happening. Like, that was a moment that it should be celebrated, but it's like, if we push off the blame of Tumbleton to Daemon's now kind of just like the bad guy that's bringing Rhaenyra down. The Dragon Seeds betraying her, even though it's not their fault. That's another sympathy point for Rhaenyra. It's just like, I don't know where it can end, because at that point, are you going to make Aegon killing Rhaenyra like this? Like, Aegon's the bad guy in all this? Like, that's really ultimately nothing. It was kind of like a mutual, like, okay, you beat me, I'm fucked. Like that's it. So I think more so Ryan Collins than anybody else is is who he is in, like the Double D, the two showrunners from Game of Thrones who don't know the Double Ds. When I reference the Double Ds, that's them. And this show has kind of showed me that it's more reason to be upset at Benioff and Weiss, the Double Ds, for completely botching the ending of Game of Thrones. Because there's one thing that I feel like if they had nailed the landing on Game of Thrones and then decided to stick with the George R. R. Martin IP and run House of the Dragon, I feel like they could have done a really, really good job of adapting. I didn't watch the three body problem show on Netflix that they did together. I have no idea if they adapted that well, but like the strongest points of the Game of Thrones show was when they were writing and adapting things directly. Like I know people can say they spotted some issues with. I think George R. R. Martin left after season 3 of Game of Thrones. Season 4 is one of my favorite seasons of Game of Thrones. I actually also really enjoy season 5 too. I know some people are down on it. And I also really enjoy season 6, even though season 6 started to go beyond the book. They could really adapt, and I'm not convinced Ryan Condal had the capability to properly adapt, and he's now kind of gone off on his own little spin on the show, which is like, okay, fine. I've moved on past that now. I'm no longer like heavily invested in things from the book needing to be in the show anymore because it's like it's just its own thing.
Yes,
but I need to know why you're doing this and what the payoff is going to be, because so far I have no reason to believe the payoff is ultimately going to be rewarding for any of this. I just don't think I don't think that they're a talented enough writing room to be able to get that done. I just unfortunately I just don't. And so when they do start making the changes to the books, like some of the things with Allison's storyline with Rhaenyra, I don't feel totally great that the end result is going to be as great as it could have been.
I get you. I think, look, Robb Stark, everyone loved Robb, but Robb was the architect of his own demise, right?
Mhm.
He made bad decisions, but that makes him a tragic character, and I think a far more interesting character. He wasn't a victim of circumstance. Like, yeah, his dad died, and then he decided to go to war, but he made decisions that were not the best, and it ended up costing him his life. I would like to see Rhaenyra make these decisions rather than have stuff happen to her, which I feel like we've been, kind of subjected to, of like, oh, Rhaenyra is not doing anything wrong. All this stuff's working against her, which is like, yeah, that's true. But we can also have Rhaenyra make mistakes and be a fallible character. And that's way more interesting, I think, than someone who's just like a victim of circumstances and the world that she lives in.
Like I understand the need to show her having like logistical problems in King's Landing, and like, but like, is that ultimately what we're gonna get down to? Is that she was a bad ruler because she started out with no money because the Greens spent all the money and people, agents within the side of the Green Targaryens kind of set her up to fail purposely by being money grubbing, hungry, power hungry people like Laris. Like that sucks too. Because I think like one of the big things about Rhaenyra that made her the most interesting is that you basically sort of win the Dance of Dragons. Like I guess like it's I've seen some people debate who actually ends up winning this war. The Blacks win the war, but then kind of like at what cost type of thing. Like they're completely ruined at that point. And then obviously Aegon takes over, and then Aegon the Third takes over, and it's like just kind of just that mosh posh of everything after that. But ultimately, Rhaenyra wins the war, and then just like basically at the cost of her own life was winning the war.
Her lineage survives, whereas Aegon's, I mean, his daughter does become, queen, but ultimately history looks at Rhaenyra as a usurper. History looks at Aegon as the king. Joffrey talks about that in, the main series where he says that she tried to take her brother's throne and got killed for it. So, yeah, like you said, she wins, but not really. She doesn't personally win.
dies very badly. Luckily
Mhm.
for her, the remaining members of her family make out pretty good, but for her, it's not. But it was ultimately of like she wasn't a good queen. She kind of, in the end, she brought a lot of it onto herself. Whereas, like, sure, once again, Viserys is to blame for a lot of what happened for him being naive to what was going on. Should have ultimately probably maybe just married her off to Aegon, or just married
Really
her off
should have. Yeah.
should have maybe just married her off to Damon like he wanted to have happen. That would have solved all this bloodshed. Everybody could have been very happy. So Otto and Viserys are always, I'll always go back to, they are the architects of all of this going on. Even if Otto's was more intentional, Viserys was not. But still, in the end result needs to be the same. Rhaenyra was a bad queen. She kind of became she kind of in her own way became the mad queen in sort sense, not necessarily like Dany just completely naturally butchering people on purpose, but she was responsible for many deaths. Like if you you don't get to say that, my dad and his best friend kind of shaped all this up, and Damon was an asshole, and that's why
Yeah.
like ultimately her death is like, it's tragic, but it's not necessarily sad. It's like, okay, yeah, this person kind of needed to go.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like that they are building that up to. And if they do, if we only really technically have, ultimately 11 or 12 episodes left of the show
Yeah,
completely,
12.
is that
Yeah.
enough? Is that enough? Is not enough of a runway for you to land what you're trying to do here? I don't think it is. And I don't mean to just sound, just like an internet troll asshole. I just don't think Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess are talented enough at writing. Specifically, Ryan Condal as a showrunner are talented enough to kind of pull this off. We've really seen nothing to this point that they are capable of doing that, because episode 2 of this season was basically what should have been the season finale of last season, which sure, that would have been a great season finale. It was one of the better episodes of the entire show. I will admit that. But a lot of the foundations are things that they of the end results for those they took from the books. Whereas if they are now wanting to try to completely do things on their own, which they have, Ryan Cohn's been very public of what he has said, that like, we're off the books. Don't care. George R. R. Martin, fuck George R. R. Martin. He's basically said all but fuck George R. R. Martin. I don't care what he wrote. I'm writing my own thing
In a
now.
little bit of his defense, George R. R. Martin seems difficult to work with. I love him.
Sure,
Great writer. Difficult to work with.
but I do think George R. R. Martin was included. I mean, look what happened to who was the guy that was the original showrunner of this show? It was Miguel Sapochnik was the original showrunner to this show, who was arguably the best director from any of the Game of Thrones episodes that we got, and he was the director of the major episodes we got towards the end.
It
Miguel
seems like
Sapochnik,
HBO screwed him over, and that's why we lost him,
left because
unfortunately.
they didn't want to give his wife a producing credit, whatever. And then all of a sudden, the domino effects fell of like, George R. R. Martin's now being pushed out, doesn't want to write it. George R. R. Martin should be writing Winds of Winter. I don't know what he's doing.
Give it up on that. Just not
but
a possibility in my mind.
I think that the Double D's worked the best seasons of Game of Thrones. I think overall people agree for the most part. Even though, like I said, I like 4, I like 5, I like 6. Were seasons 1 through 3 were the best written shows because they were directly adapted, and they also had George R. R. Martin in the writing room directly helping write those things out. And I think ultimately, like, the books were far easier to adapt, right, than the Fire and Blood, because Fire and Blood reads like it's a history book being told by the perspective of an unreliable narrator. So like there is a lot of wiggle room there.
Potentially undeniable narrators.
There's a lot of wiggle room there for you to include things or misinterpret things and try to go the other path. Sure. That is not really ultimately what my problem is. My problem is that they don't do it in a fashion that makes a lot of sense to why they're doing it. I think their motivations to why they change a lot of things don't make a lot of sense. I think that they do things, some just to do them, some because they fall into whatever the current like climate is in this world, which is, I guess, a natural thing to do. But ultimately, in terms of like a narrative change to what they're doing, like I really go back to the White Worm and Rhaenyra of like it's a completely different storyline than what we got in the book, and I don't understand what the purpose of it is. If we're
Mhm.
sitting here, this time in 2.5 years or whenever we'll finally get the final season of this story arc, at least, like I said, I can see them potentially wanting to go beyond the dance storyline. I think that they could maybe do that and start kind of. That's when they can really start freestyling, but if we're sitting here in 2.5 years or whatever discussing them really kind of nailing it in the end, then I will fully admit I will put my foot in my mouth and say, I was wrong, they were right. We have seen no signs to that. And I know a lot of people are like, the season's great, each episode's been fantastic, Ryan Condal's great, whatever. But I think a lot of the same people that are saying that have actually been kind of shitting on the past two episodes are those people that have been completely brainwashed by Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess of like, hey, we played all the hits in season one. I know Miguel, we were just talking about Miguel Sapochnik being there and being included as long as George R. R. Martin. We played all the hits in season one. You love the big episodes where we had the big things happen in season two, but you hated all the rest. And then we came out in this season with a home run, killing Jaceres, and then having the Rhaenyra taking King's Landing episode 2. This is all great, big plot points, and then all of a sudden, we get the 2-3 episodes of actual story building, which I think has been some of the better writing work of Sarah Hess and Ryan Condal that they have put out to this point, of actually beginning to flesh out characters, actually being able to balance different storylines happening at once. Now people are starting to come out of the woodwork and complain that this is bullshit and they're not good, where I'm like, this is actually the first time I've seen decent writing done by that writer's room, and now people are coming out saying that they hate these bridge episodes because all they want is the constant payoff and the constant action. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And then I have sympathy for Ryan Condal and Sarah Hess, but then I remember that they put themselves in this situation to begin with. So then it's like, then I just start getting mad at everybody. Like I said, now I pull in the double D's. I'm like, it's the double D's thing completely messed up the ending of Game of Thrones just to get to their Star Wars movies that they would never ultimately going to be able to end up to make anyway, because they destroyed the ending of Game of Thrones so badly. If they wouldn't have just done that and nailed the ending of Game of Thrones, taken their time, they then could have completely like prolonged their careers another 20 years by then diving into Fire and Blood. And by the time they did that, Fire and Blood 2 probably would have already been out. Maybe, I don't know. I think George R. R. Martin's writing Fire and Blood Part 2 now instead of Winds of Winter, because he doesn't know what to do with Winds of Winter, because the double D's fucked up the ending of Game of Thrones so much, and he's so scarred and terrified by that now he's moving on to other projects like Fire and Blood Part 2, like writing more Duncan Egg books, which great. That's great for us because Night of the Seven Kingdoms was fantastic. The best thing that the Game of Thrones IP has put out since like season 5, 6 of Game of Thrones. This domino effect of people I'm just constantly mad at now when it comes to Game of Thrones. I'm mad at Brian Condal. I'm mad at Sarah Hess.
Yeah.
I'm mad at George R. R. Martin. I still absolutely despise the double D's for what they did to the ending of Game of Thrones. Like, I'm just mad and I want the payoff. And I feel like we're starting to finally get there, starting to get good writing. But then now we have like the TikTok generation attention span of everybody like, we want all this action. We want this payoff to happen now, this payoff to happen now. Or I'm like, this is the first time this writing room was actually seen to be able to start doing their own thing and start building actual character arcs for these people. It could end up ultimately sucking. Like, so that's a different conversation, but this is the first time they've actually started to show like they're capable of adding in their own stuff and it actually working and it working out well. And I feel like the reaction to that is them going to make them realize, oh, then we need to get back to just having this big event bullshit, and like everything in between is kind of pointless and doesn't really make any sense just to get us to that end point. And I think that's where the show really, really suffers. And I know I have now gone on kind of my tangent.
That was great.
Shout out Scott and Brian, famous from the Blindsiders show. They are big fans. They listen to this. I told them I was returning to the airways this week, so I know that they're listening. That was my very long tangent. They always say you need to let Brian talk more. You need to let Ben talk more. And I said, yes, but I have so much to say.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. Because I've been very I made a very conscious choice to just not look at what people are saying online. One, because I want to do the show and have my own thoughts, but two, because everybody hates everything so much that it's a bummer. when I want to just be like, hey, I'm enjoying it. I think season 3 has been a big improvement over season 2. I thought season 1 was amazing. I think it's the best of the 3 seasons, but you know, we'll see what happens. And I hope that they can stick the landing, like you said. Regardless, I'm not gonna, sing their praises too high until I see them stick the landing, because it's going to be hard to do with just 12 episodes left. But I'm really excited to have you on board to talk about this. I think this has been the strongest episode of the season so far for our coverage of it. I think you brought a lot of great stuff to the table. And anything you want to plug or promote before we get out of here?
No, I've been really enjoying a summer off from podcasting, but now that I'm back in the seat, this was
I dragged you back.
We went an hour and a half, which was far longer than I expected. It just shows there is still a lot to talk about, and to ultimately, I try not to be a negative person. I've been burned a lot in the past by trying to be positive. Season 2 of House of the Dragon, I was positive the entire way out. Like, I'm liking this Daemon storyline. This is working out. The whole Dragon Sea thing, this is great. And then ultimately we saw at the ending, it was all edging bullshit to get us into the next season, because HBO and their executive office is a complete mess and are kind of just in the process of completely tanking HBO's like bread and butter, which is their original television series. Although The Pit, fantastic, best show on TV right now, fantastic season of TV.
Incredible seasons of that, so
Survivor season 50, I was very positive about. Ultimately, egg on my face. That won't stop me. I despise that season. I think Jeff Probst should be put in jail, similar to Ryan Condal.
Right.
But in the end, it's
you don't have like director jail. We'll just have our TV jail.
Showrunner jail. We'll categorize Jeff as a showrunner. Ryan Condal and Jeff Probst are getting like a 30-day prison sentence and then being put on probation pretty much every time they're let out of that prison sentence.
And sometimes you have great showrunners who should probably be in jail for their actions, like Joss Whedon. So it's like, what are you going to do here?
Yes, and who also wrote the Superman book? Max Landis also should be in prison.
Right.
And I think he's like making a comeback now or something like that.
He is, He did his, I guess, time in Hollywood jail. Now he's back.
I try not to be negative when we talk about these things, but I feel like the things that stand out to you are the negatives. Like ultimately, The Boys' final season, bad. The payoff, not good. Final season of Squid Games, bad, not good. I think
that especially sucked because I thought the second season was so good, and that it just
I agree.
I did too. A cliff.
I think that there is so much content that gets put out, especially for fictional television and movies. There is so much content that gets put out now that I think that it's now turned into a quantity over quality game for a lot of these places.
Oh, totally.
I don't think, I looked at Ryan Condal's history of writing. By the way, you asked me to end the episode and how everything's going, and we've now gone into this whole ordeal. So I do apologize. I will end on this quickly though. Ryan Condal's previous writing credits were kind of like a joke. He wrote the Rock Hercules movie, the Rock 8 movie, Rampage, both kind of just action nonsense. And then he wrote that show, The Colony. I don't know if you watched it. I never watched it. It was with the guy that played Sawyer in Lost. He was in it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's definitely one where it's like, I should watch that because I like him, and I didn't watch it.
It seemed like a middle tier show, which is fine. People need.
My mom said it was fine. Yeah, that's what she said. Literally, she's like, it's fine.
The boomers and the older generations, they need these less intense, 17 episode shows that are on USA Network and stuff. They need that. And the same thing, like this, we need people in this world that do these jobs. We need showrunners that handles those shows. Those were pretty much his only writing credits leading into the House of the Dragon. That show, Colony, ended in 2018. House of the Dragon came out in 2022. Obviously, I assume part of that 4-year gap is when he got this job, started writing it.
Yeah, the pre-production stuff, all that.
When you hand off, and people forget too, the first spinoff that they were doing from Game of Thrones was so bad that they canceled it before it even aired. It was with
I
Naomi
desperately
Campbell.
want to see that pilot, but I
I've
don't
had,
think we'll ever get to. But I
I've
want to see it so
uh,
bad.
it was one of those things I think they deemed like unreleasable. Like we cannot show this to
Yeah,
the public. It's that bad. Which is quite shocking. But so this was the second spinoff that was technically greenlit by HBO, and I just feel like when you take what was at the time and probably still is your biggest IP on your network. I know that Succession was still on when this show came out, and that was probably like that's their big like awards baby. But in terms of IP, House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones universe, I just figured they would turn it over to somebody with a little bit more experience. And like once again, Miguel Sapochnik
yeah,
was
that was
originally
their
the one who
guy.
was running it, and Ryan Condon was still heavily involved, but Miguel Sapochnik was the one that was supposed to be kind of like really taking the helm. And obviously that did not end up working out. So it's just in the end, Condon, he's not going to say no to running the show. Understandable.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it once again, we could be sitting here in 2 years and it could all have been worth it. Really great ending. We're just like the season 3 and season 4 best seasons of this show ever. I don't know, but either
If
way,
nothing else, we have A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which I
right.
thought was excellent.
And hopefully we continue to get more great television shows. So like The Pit, best show on TV. Really, really well written. I guess, yeah, ultimately we'll wait and see. Long story short, I'm trying not to be negative when we do this stuff, but it's tough not to be negative about a lot of stuff in this world. And I think the current state of television is one of those things that's tough not to be negative about. But I hope to be proven wrong. I hope to be sitting here during the finale talking with you that how much they really nailed it. Ultimately, what I need to anything to plug, we will be back talking about Survivor in the fall. We will be there.
Yes. Season 51 coming up quick.
As much as like the really, really bad taste season 50 has left in my mouth, we will be there talking about Survivor in the fall. And then after that, we have our Traders show, Meet You at Breakfast.
Yeah, we got, I think, 2 seasons of the Traders because we got the civilian season,
yep.
which is going to be awesome.
So the rumor is that the winter will be the civilian season, then the potential apparent all-star season will be released, I think, like next summer is like the thought process.
Perfect.
I don't know how true that is, but long story short, our reality sector of this station is very busy, and we're very much looking forward to Big Brother out right now. The Have Not Room, please listen to that. That's you and my friend Ben, my fellow co-hosts, are doing that. I have not clued into Big Brother, but I hope everyone's having fun. As much as I've been pushed.
It's been fun so far. Yeah,
by my friends.
2 weeks in, Rick Devens, current HOH of Big Brother, very fun to have him over there. Him and Dee from Survivor. That's been a blast. Love both of them. So yeah, go check that out. Obviously, we can get everything to the main channel. Got videos at least once a week there. Every single day over on the Those Fake Nerds channel, Cup videos there. We can get sports. Football's about to start. Dylan and I think, still are going to do a Notre Dame podcast.
Figure it out. Yeah. At the very least, I wonder if we can go into like a quick weekly college football show. But either way, I am a Notre Dame fan. I will never complain about talking about Notre Dame. I really hope this is the year. But we have that among other things we're going to talk about. And then the people are craving more Wicked Good show. Discussing movies. I am seeing the Odyssey for the second time tomorrow night, and then I'll be seeing it in 70mm IMAX on Saturday.
Oh shit!
So I will be well versed.
I cannot wait to hear what that's like, because that just looks incredible from what I've seen. People I've seen like the projectionists like taking pictures, and just like, wow, what a view. Is a 70mm that there is one in Massachusetts, right?
There's not. There might be there might be a standard non-IMAX 70mm. I think you can project regular 70mm on a non-IMAX stream, but to project actual IMAX 70mm, the only place is in New England is Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay, so yeah, the Providence Mall there was Apple Cinemas.
Apple Cinemas, formerly Showcase, now Apple. Yes.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I can't wait to hear about that. I'm hoping to see the Odyssey this weekend, so then we can talk about it. And from what I've heard, it's awesome. So
yeah. So maybe we'll come back and make a good show. We got Spider-Man coming out soon.
Yes, yeah.
We got trailers
We
for
got a
Dune and
trailer for
Avengers.
Doomsday.
So
Yeah,
it'd be nice to connect on that stuff. Lots of fun stuff coming out.
absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening. I know a longer one than usual, but we had so much to talk about in this episode. So we'll see you in the next one. And Dylan, thank you so much for your time.
See you, everybody.